If you've ever worked the night shift in a hospital morgue, you know the silence isn't empty. It's heavy. It presses in on you, thick and cold, like the air is waiting for something to happen. That night, I heard tapping from inside one of the body drawers. Not the pipes, not the building settling. Actual desperate tapping, like someone trapped begging to get out. My radio was dead. The lights flickered, then died. I was alone, with only my flashlight and the sound of frantic pounding echoing in the dark. If you think that was bad, wait until you hear what happened next. I'd been working as a morgue attendant for almost 3 years. Nights were usually quiet, just me and the hum of the freezers. The hospital was old, the kind of place where the walls seemed to remember every bad thing that ever happened inside. Most people can't handle the morgue, but I like the solitude. No patients, no doctors, just paperwork and routine. That night started like any other. I clocked in at 11:45 p.m., grabbed a stale coffee from the break room, and headed down to the basement. The elevator rattled all the way down, the lights flickering as usual. The morgue was colder than normal, and the air felt thick, almost damp. I chalked it up to the storm outside. Rain hammered the windows and thunder rolled overhead, shaking the ceiling tiles. I did my rounds, checked the logbook, and made sure all the drawers were locked. 3 bodies that night, 2 John Does, and an old man who'd passed away earlier that day. I settled in at the desk, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the way the shadows seemed to move in the corners of the room. I told myself it was just another boring shift, but deep down, I felt something was off. Like the morgue was holding its breath, waiting. It started with a faint tapping. I thought it was the pipes. Old buildings make weird noises, especially during storms. But this was different. It was coming from the far wall, where the body drawers lined up in 2 neat rows. The tapping was slow at first, then faster, like someone drumming their fingers in panic. I stood up, flashlight in hand, and walked over. The tapping stopped. I waited, heart pounding, listening to the rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Then just as I was about to turn away, the tapping started again, louder, more desperate. It was coming from drawer 14, the one with the old man. I hesitated. I'd heard stories, nerves firing after death, bodies twitching, even the occasional groan as air escaped. But this was different. This was rhythmic, intentional. I reached for the handle, but my radio crackled with static, then went dead. The overhead lights flickered, buzzing, then snapped off, plunging the room into darkness. My flashlight beam shook as I pointed it at the drawer. The tapping turned to pounding, metal rattling against metal. I backed away, but the pounding grew louder, echoing through the room. I tried the radio again, nothing. My phone had no signal. I was completely alone. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the dark. The pounding stopped. Silence. I took a shaky breath, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But then I heard it, a whisper so close it felt like it was right behind me. "Let me out." I spun around, flashlight darting across the room. Nothing, just empty tables and the cold white tile. I felt the air grow colder, my breath fogging in front of me. The hair on my arms stood up. I knew I should leave, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Curiosity, maybe. Or fear, or both. I reached for the drawer handle again, my hand trembling. The metal was ice cold. I hesitated, then pulled. The drawer slid open with a screech. It was empty. No body, just deep, fresh scratch marks gouged into the metal. My heart hammered in my chest. I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. That's when I heard footsteps behind me, slow and heavy, moving across the tile. I turned, but the room was empty. The footsteps stopped. The silence pressed in, thicker than ever. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. I tried to run, but my legs felt heavy, like I was wading through water. The flashlight flickered, casting long, twisted shadows on the walls. I could hear breathing, raspy, uneven, coming from somewhere in the room. I called out again, voice cracking, "Who's there?" No answer, just that awful wet breathing. I backed toward the door, never taking my eyes off the rows of drawers. That's when I saw it, a shape just at the edge of the light, pale, thin, hunched over. It moved with a jerky, unnatural motion, dragging itself across the floor. I froze, unable to look away. The thing stopped, head snapping up. Its eyes were wide open, milky and unblinking, fixed right on me. I fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Locked. I slammed my shoulder against it, but it held firm. The shape crawled closer, its fingers scraping the tile, leaving dark, wet streaks behind. I could smell it now, rot, old blood, something worse. The thing whispered again, voice like wind through broken glass. "Let me out." I screamed, pounding on the door, begging for someone to hear me. The lights flickered back on for a split second, and I saw the thing's face, sunken cheeks, torn lips, eyes that looked straight through me. Then darkness again. The breathing was right behind me now, cold air brushing the back of my neck. I spun, swinging the flashlight wildly. The beam caught the edge of a table, then nothing. The room was empty. The breathing stopped. I pressed my back to the door, heart racing, sweat freezing on my skin. I could hear the rain pounding above, the storm shaking the building. Then the pounding started again, this time from every drawer all at once. Metal rattled, voices whispered, begging, pleading. "Let me out. Let me out," over and over, louder and louder, until it was all I could hear. I covered my ears, sinking to the floor, rocking back and forth, praying for it to stop. Suddenly everything went silent. The lights snapped back on. The drawers were closed, the room empty. My phone buzzed. Signal restored. I scrambled to my feet, unlocked the door, and ran. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air, rain soaking through my clothes. If you think that's where it ends, you're wrong. Because when I got home, I found deep, fresh scratch marks on my bedroom wall. And every night since, I hear tapping in the walls, just as I'm about to fall asleep. I never went back to that hospital. I quit the next day, no notice, no explanation. Some people say I lost my mind. Others whisper that I saw something I shouldn't have. The hospital replaced me within a week, but I heard the new guy didn't last long either. Some say he never came back. Others swear they saw him standing at the basement window, staring out into the storm. I still can't sleep through the night. Every time the rain starts, I hear that tapping. Soft at first, then louder, more desperate. I moved apartments, changed my number, tried to forget. But the fear follows me. If you ever find yourself alone in a hospital morgue at midnight and you hear tapping from inside the drawers, don't open them. Some things are better left locked away. If you ever work nights in a hospital, listen to the old staff when they warn you about the morgue. My first week as a janitor, I was told, never prop open the freezer door, no matter what. I thought it was just a creepy joke, until the night I heard the heavy door creak open behind me, even though I was alone. The air turned icy, and I saw wet, bare footprints leading out of the freezer and across the tile. I followed them, heart pounding, not knowing if I was chasing a patient, a prankster, or something much worse. I started working as a hospital janitor last winter. The pay was decent and the hours were quiet. Just me, my mop, and the endless echo of my footsteps in empty hallways. The morgue was always my last stop. It was in the basement, tucked away from the rest of the hospital, and colder than anywhere else in the building. The other janitors hated it. They'd swap shifts or bribe each other to avoid it. I didn't mind. I figured the dead couldn't hurt me. On my first night, the outgoing staff gave me a warning. "Don't prop open the freezer door," they said. "If it closes, let it close. Don't try to hold it open." I laughed it off, thinking they were just trying to scare the new guy. But every night, I'd find the freezer door closed, no matter how many times I left it open while cleaning. Sometimes I'd hear a faint thud from inside, like something shifting on the shelves. I told myself it was just the cold metal settling. But that night, everything changed. The hospital was nearly empty, and a snowstorm raged outside, rattling the windows and making the lights flicker. I was mopping the morgue floor, humming to myself, when I heard the freezer door creak open behind me. I turned, expecting to see a co-worker, but the hallway was empty. The air grew colder, and my breath fogged in front of my face. That's when I noticed the footprints, bare, wet, and leading out of the freezer across the tile and toward the exit. I froze. The prints were too small for an adult, but too big for a child. They looked wrong. The toes were splayed, the arches too high, and the skin was pale, almost blue. I followed them, my shoes squeaking on the wet floor. The prints wound through the morgue, past the gurneys, and disappeared at the elevator. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to turn back, but curiosity got the better of me. I pressed the elevator button, and the doors slid open with a groan. The inside was empty, but the footprints continued, now smeared, as if whoever made them was dragging their feet. I stepped inside, heart pounding, and pressed the button for the lobby. The elevator shuddered, then started to rise. The lights flickered, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move in the corner. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the hum of the machinery and the pounding of my heart. When the doors opened, the lobby was deserted. The footprints ended at the front doors, which were locked tight. I checked the security cameras, but the feed was nothing but static. I radioed the night supervisor, but got no answer. I was alone. I went back to the morgue, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, maybe a leak in the freezer. But the door was wide open, and the cold was even worse than before. I closed it shivering and finished my shift as fast as I could. If you think that's where it ends, you're wrong, because what happened next still keeps me up at night. The next morning, the hospital was in chaos. A body was missing from the freezer, a John Doe, no family, no ID. The staff searched everywhere, but there was no sign of him. The only clue was a trail of water leading from the morgue to the elevator, then vanishing at the lobby doors. They found me in the elevator, unconscious, clutching a frostbitten hand that wasn't mine. My own hand was fine, but the one I held was blue, stiff and ice cold. The doctors said I must have passed out from exhaustion, but I know what I saw. I remember the feeling of something cold and heavy grabbing my wrist, pulling me down as I tried to leave the morgue. I tried to explain, but nobody believed me. They said I was overworked, maybe hallucinating from lack of sleep. But the footprints were real. The missing body was real. And the hand I woke up holding was real, even if it disappeared before anyone else could see it. I quit that week. I couldn't face another night in that basement. The hospital replaced me, but the new janitor didn't last long either. Some say he saw the same footprints. Others say he heard the freezer door slam shut behind him, trapping him inside for hours. I still have nightmares about that night. Sometimes I wake up with my hand numb and cold, like something is holding it tight. Sometimes I hear the freezer door creak open in my dreams, and I see wet footprints leading out of the darkness. If you ever work nights in a hospital and you hear the freezer door open behind you, don't look back. Some things are better left in the cold. I moved out of town, changed jobs, and tried to forget what happened. But the memory follows me. Every winter, when the air turns cold and the nights get long, I hear that heavy door creak open in my mind. I see the footprints, wet and pale, leading away from the freezer. The hospital never found the missing body. Some say it walked out on its own. Others whisper that it's still down there, waiting for the next unlucky soul to prop open the door. If you ever find yourself alone in a hospital morgue at night, remember my story. And whatever you do, never ever leave the freezer door open. If you ever find a ringing phone in a hospital morgue, don't answer it. I learned that the hard way. The first time it happened, I was alone, tagging a John Doe when his phone started buzzing in his pocket. The screen just said, "Home." I picked it up, thinking it was a grieving family member. But the voice on the other end was frantic, begging to know if her husband was okay. She said he'd just called her. The problem was he'd been dead for hours. If you think that's the creepiest part, you're not even close. I work as a morgue technician in a busy city hospital. Most nights are routine. Tag the bodies, log the paperwork, and try not to think too hard about the silence. The dead don't scare me. It's the living I usually worry about. But that changed the night I found the phone. It was a slow shift. Only one new arrival. A John Doe, middle-aged, no ID, found collapsed on the street. I was alone in the morgue, the hum of the freezers the only sound. As I was prepping the body, I noticed a bulge in his pocket. I pulled out a cheap cell phone, the kind you buy at a gas station. The screen was cracked, but it was still working. That's when it started to ring. The caller ID just said, "Home." I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, shaky and desperate, asked if her husband was okay. She said he'd just called her minutes ago. I checked the call log. There was an outgoing call made after the man's official time of death. I tried to explain to the woman that her husband was gone, but she kept insisting he'd called her. She started crying, then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. I checked the call log again. The outgoing call was real, time-stamped nearly an hour after the man had died. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the phone glitched. Maybe someone else had used it. But I was the only one in the morgue, and the body hadn't been touched since it arrived. I put the phone in a plastic bag and logged it as evidence. I tried to forget about it, but that night, as I was locking up, the phone started ringing again. Same number. Same caller ID, "Home." I didn't answer. I left it in the evidence locker and went home, trying to convince myself it was just a weird coincidence. But the next night, the phone was back in my locker, buzzing at midnight. This time when I answered, I heard my own voice on the other end, whispering for help. The line was full of static, but I could make out my own words. Please get me out. I'm not supposed to be here. I dropped the phone, heart racing, and ran out of the morgue. I tried to destroy the phone, smashed it with a hammer, threw it in the incinerator. But every night it reappeared in my locker, ringing at midnight. Sometimes the voice on the other end was mine. Sometimes it was the woman, still begging for her husband. Sometimes it was just static, broken by faint, desperate sobbing. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. My co-workers noticed, but I couldn't tell them the truth. Who would believe me? I started dreading midnight, knowing the phone would ring, knowing I'd hear my own voice begging for help. One night, I decided to record the call. I set up my phone to capture the audio, determined to prove I wasn't losing my mind. At midnight, the morgue phone rang. I answered, hands shaking, and pressed record. The line was silent at first, just the hum of static. Then slowly I heard footsteps, soft, shuffling like someone walking barefoot on tile. The voice that came next was mine, but twisted, distorted like it was coming from underwater. You shouldn't have answered, it whispered. Now you can't leave. I tried to hang up, but the phone wouldn't disconnect. The static grew louder, drowning out everything else. I dropped the phone, but the call kept going, the voice growing more frantic, more desperate. Suddenly the lights in the morgue flickered and went out. I was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the phone's cracked screen. I heard footsteps behind me, slow and heavy. I turned but saw nothing. The air grew cold, and I felt a hand, ice cold and clammy, close around my wrist. I screamed, but no sound came out. The grip tightened, pulling me toward the freezer. I fought, kicking and clawing, but I couldn't break free. The phone was still ringing, the screen flashing with my name. The last thing I remember was the freezer door swinging open, the cold swallowing me whole. I woke up hours later, lying on the morgue floor, the phone buzzing in my hand. The call log showed dozens of missed calls, all from home. My wrist was bruised and the air was thick with the smell of cold metal and something rotten. If you think this is just a story, think again. I still have the recording. Sometimes, late at night, I play it back, hoping to hear something different. But it's always the same. My own voice, begging for help, trapped in the static. I quit my job the next day. I moved across the city, changed my number, tried to start over, but the phone still finds me. Every night at midnight, it rings. No caller ID, just static and my own voice whispering from the other side. I've tried everything to get rid of it, but it always comes back. Some say the morgue is haunted. Others think I lost my mind. Maybe they're right. But if you ever find a ringing phone in a hospital morgue, don't answer it. Some calls are never meant to be picked up, and some voices should stay silent forever.